Hi, this is NIcole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. This past weekend, I participated in the Natalie Goldberg virtual writing retreat, which was based on the Writing Down the Bones virtual class that I took back in the spring, except that this event was all live. There were no pre-recorded lessons or anything like that. There was a schedule that we had to show up for 4 different sessions every single day for 3 days that were live Zoom calls. Those were recorded and we could rewatch them if we couldn't make it, but the actual weekend was sort of unrolling in real time. And I was really, really excited about it. I was excited to be able to participate this summer. I thought I was only going to be able to do the winter session, but everything just sort of fell into place that I could sign up for this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday retreat. But because I did it so sort of last minute, I didn't really know everything that was involved in the schedule beforehand. And the one thing that really surprised me was I believe it was after the first teaching session on the first day, as we were wrapping up to go to a break, Natalie Goldberg said something along the lines, now, again, remember to try to stay silent until our next session, because this, as a silent writing retreat, you really want to embrace that for this weekend. And I was like, wait, what? What did I miss? Silent? Okay. So let me just give you a rundown of what our daily schedule was, and then I'll come back to that note, because that's really one of my biggest takeaways from this weekend, the power of that silence. And the struggle that I had with it from right out the gate. But like I said, the retreat was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And every single day, the schedule was the same of 4 sessions that, for me, on Eastern time, started at noon. The first session was from noon to 12:30 p.m. It was a half-hour sitting meditation. Now, first, just a comment on that. I've had a lot of experience with meditation. I've probably been meditating for about 12 years, where I can say that I've done it regularly and had lots of different experiences with meditation. But this was my first experience, if I'm being honest. I don't think I've done this before, where I just did a silent meditation. Most of my meditation experience has been either with a mantra or being a guided meditation, music in the background, something. There was nothing in this meditation except to sit, and for a half hour. So that was very interesting. But again, let me just get through the schedule. So that was every morning, started with that half-hour sitting meditation. Then we would have a half-hour break, and at 1 p.m., we would begin the live session with Natalie Goldberg herself, which was, they say instruction from Natalie Goldberg, but it was really doing her writing practice. And lots of reading, where she would read to us from various texts, sometimes in novels, sometimes poetry, short stories, just reading different bits of literature to sort of hear words, hear how other writers do it, and be inspired in that way. And then I believe we had a 2-hour break after that one. And then we had a 1-hour session with Natalie's teaching partner, Dorothea Mendoza, who did writing practice with us. Usually we started with a small sitting meditation. Again, I want to say 5 or 10 minutes of sitting meditation. And then we would do 2 writings for, I think it was 10 minutes each. And then we would break out and read to each other, do breakout rooms of like 4 people in the class. And then at the end of that, we would have, let me think of the times here. That was from 6 to 7. So I think we had another 2-hour break before we ended each day with a half-hour sitting meditation again. Now again, what I didn't realize in the beginning is that for all of those breaks in between, we were encouraged to remain silent. So when Natalie had first said that, I was surprised, but I also was excited because when I was in high school, I went to a Catholic high school. I think I've mentioned that before. We would have every single year a retreat day that was one of my favorite days of the year every year, because they would hand us a book at the beginning of the day and say, you have to have this book read. I think it was like by the end of the week or what have you. We would start the day in the chapel where we would do prayer or whatever, but we were not allowed to speak the entire day. No one was. The entire school was silent. And I think maybe they gave us some like writing assignments at different points. But basically, to me, they gave me an entire day to read a book where I didn't feel like and this is very interesting every time I think about it. The way I think about it is I say, I had this whole day where I didn't have to speak to my friends. And it kind of caught myself. I'm like, why am I saying have to? And I realized that I had felt consciously or subconsciously, I feel this burden to have to speak to people. And the silent retreat of that day was like a weight off my shoulders that I just could do my thing, just be quiet. So when Natalie said, here we are, we're going to be silent, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I don't think I've really engaged in that level of self-restraint, I guess, in a really long time. But I also, thinking back to that time, thought, I'm not going to have a problem with this at all. I love being silent. Well, let me tell you what a load of hilarity me trying to be silent was this weekend. The first day, that Friday, there was a family event. And since I had signed up for this class, we decided, that was it. I was going to stay home and my husband would take my son and they would hang out with the family. So even more so, when Natalie said, this is silent, I was like, well, great. Everybody's out of the house. Shouldn't be a problem at all. I cannot tell you how many times I caught myself talking to no one. No one. It actually took a concerted effort to stay silent. And the practice of staying silent all weekend was really enlightening to me. For those of you who have been longtime listeners, you know that I've done The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron a number of times, which is that 12-week course of tapping into your creativity. And every single week has a different lesson and challenge. But week number 4 is like the one that makes or breaks people, because it's reading deprivation week on top of whatever other challenges happen in week number 4. There is this challenge to not read anything. And in one of the years when I took on this challenge while reading with Sam Kimberly's group at Creative Life Scholars, she said, in the 21st century, I think that includes social media, our emails, computer, and everything. So we decided we weren't going to do any of those inputs. Reading deprivation week was going to cut out all things. And that really enlightened me to the power of shutting down those inputs for the power of my own creativity. I rediscovered old loves like drawing and just tapping into different things that would make great artist dates for me later on in that week. I mean, that week just helped me see so many different things about myself creatively and also about my writing, because I wasn't bombarding myself with all of the inputs that I typically do. Not even realizing. So when I was taking on this challenge, what ended up being a challenge of being silent, I actually recognized that it was a very similar feeling, because what I was now sort of regulating was my output. And I've discussed before and recognized before that being on social media, and probably I recognize this in Reading Deprivation Week, if I think about it, being on social media is an output space that I have to be careful of. I have a lot of wasted words, I like to call them, these, gorgeous, well thought out Facebook posts that I write, when it's like, okay, but that could be, going into a book, going into an essay, going into something else. But here I was this weekend talking to no one, or the lizard, or the fish, all the pets in the house, and asking myself, well, what's that? Where's all that going? What if I don't say it? Because I'm not supposed to. What ends up happening? Well, the great joy of this weekend was that after each bout of silence, I was then brought back into a session of writing. And so I was no longer wasting words. They were going out onto the page. I had all of this output that needed to be expressed. But what's very interesting about the writing practice that Natalie Goldberg presents is that it's not just like the morning pages that we see in The Artist's Way, where it's just a brain dump. Natalie presents us with topics, and that sort of hones you into one thing. So it's just a really, really interesting pairing of taking this time of silence, of, I don't want to say self-control, but a little bit of constraint on one outlet of your own, and then coming back to the page with guidance of a topic, to then release whatever is within. So I really think this idea of a silent retreat is something that everyone should consider, whether it is finding one that's out there or creating one for yourself. Because in addition to this silence being, pairing really well with these writing activities, in those moments of silence, you also become a much more powerful observer. If you could just shut up, Nicole, you can then hear what's going on around you, see what's going on around with you, because you're not worried about what you need to say. So very, very, very interesting. So I just want to give you some thoughts that I have about how you can create your own silent retreat. You can seek out others that are out there. But this isn't a difficult thing to replicate. And that's all I kept thinking this weekend, is like, I can do this for myself on a regular basis. Because it's one thing that was really interesting is that when I did look at the schedule after I signed up, and I saw that it was like all day, from noon till 9:30 p.m. essentially, I was like, wow, I don't know that I can show up in that way 3 days in a row on the weekend in the summer. And then it was midway through the retreat, really. So midway through day 2 that I was like, 3 days is not enough. I need more of this. I just want this to keep going. So got me thinking, how do I keep this going? How do I make this happen again? There are certain things that I think were really pivotal to making this a success for me. And one is that it was scheduled ahead. It was on the calendar. It was that I needed to show up for this thing July 15th, 16th, and 17th. And I made that commitment, and that's when it was going to happen, and it was going to be all day for those 3 days. I'm not saying that it always needs to be that long. It could be a 1-day silent retreat like I used to have in high school. I mean, I think those days that we had once a year in my high school career were very refreshing for getting me through those 4 years of my life. One single day amidst all of madness. So even if it's 1 day, but schedule it ahead and say, on this day, August 5th, just let everybody know you're not available. I'm doing my writing retreat. And you can decide if it's at home or if you want to get away. And get away can mean, I know many writers that have done the whole, I'm going to go get a hotel room so that I can really get my writing done. Well, why not do it for a retreat? You can do that. And that could really schedule it ahead and put it on the calendar. But you can also do it in a more casual way by saying, on this day, what was that date I just made up? August 5th? On August 5th, I'm going to spend the day at this local cafe. Or you really want to, encourage and support this idea of silence. I'm going to go to the library, go to a space that, that kind of activity of staying silent will be encouraged if you struggle with it, which, like I said, I didn't. If you had asked me before this weekend, I would say I would have no problem doing that. And I don't have a problem with it as in I don't mind being silent. I enjoy it, clearly. But I just didn't know. I lost the skill. I literally lost the skill. I blame podcasting, really. I'm talking to a foam thing in front of me. I'm too used to talking with no one in the room. So that's number one. You schedule it ahead, deciding where you're going to do it as well. So put it on the calendar and have a location in mind. Are you going to do this at home? And just ask whoever's in the home to sort of support you in that. Are you going to really invest in this and get a hotel room? Or are you going to find another place like a cafe that creatively inspires you and fuels you, or a space like a library that helps support the silent aspect, or, all these wonderful outdoor spaces. I mean, depending on where you are right now, the weather is wackadoo. Staying inside might be your best plan of action, but there are a lot of beautiful green spaces here on Staten Island that could support a day like this. That would be quite wonderful if the weather's right. But the second thing that I think is really important is not just scheduling, that's the day I'm going to do it, but this schedule that Natalie and her team had devised for each day, I think was also really important. That it was scheduled with activities in mind and breaks in between. I think was really fantastic. I love the model, and that's why I went through it with you. We started each day with meditation. We had a break. We came back, and there were little sitting meditations in the writing bits too, sometimes a 5-minute or 3 minutes of just calming ourselves before we came back to the page. And then have topics to write on. I can't recommend enough. I mean, I sound like a pitch person for Natalie Goldberg right now, but she has the Writing Down the Bones deck. I'm looking around because mine is right here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Hold on. Okay, that is what it's called. Writing Down the Bones deck. It's 60 cards to free the writer within. And basically, you could that could be your activity time. But I would say schedule your day. I'm going to have this much time of meditation or taking a walk or doing something that sort of is supportive of your writing. Reading. I'm going to have this much time of reading this particular novel or what have you. Then a little break, and then getting into the writing. And I feel like for a regenerative retreat like this is not the same as I'm going to take this day to tackle my work in progress. That's a different kind of energy, and I think there's a lot of power in that. But for what I really would love everyone to experience, I think this is a great space to just let your mind wander on the page without the pressure of productivity, without worrying about the perfect project or what have you. Just write. Just really go randomly through these types of topics and see what comes up on the page. But the point that I was making is to schedule it. Then, we're going to have a couple of hours of just these repeated writing exercises. And then another break with a walk. I mean, for me, the two things that were really helpful for those silent times were taking a walk outside in nature and reading. I was reading Hamlet because that's what we were up to this month for the Stop Writing Alone Story Club. And so it was really great to dip into, a challenging work like that while I was in this quiet mind space, and then come back to the sessions where we were writing and reading. Really, really fantastic. And then we ended the day with another meditation. I mean, it's just very similar to my high school retreats too, because we started and ended the day with prayer, very similar to meditation. And I think there is something really important when you create that daily schedule of having a beginning time and an end time. I don't know what Natalie Goldberg's rules were, but for me, I could speak before noon and I could speak after 9:30. Like that was, I reserved the silence for the hours of the retreat. Or I reserved the silence challenge because Lord knows I was not successful in being silent all the way through. And then I think what is really important once you've made this schedule and set aside this time and made a commitment to this is that you can decide whether or not this is something you want to take on your own or invite others to join you. If you have another writer friend, whether it's a virtual writer friend or someone in person, this is something that can be really wonderful in community. This particular retreat that I was in, there were over 200 participants throughout the weekend, and I knew 2 of them. That's it. But in all of the breakout sessions, I never got paired with anybody that I knew. I never got paired up. So even not knowing who I was with, it was really just great. What we would do during those writing sessions is that we would break out and read aloud what we wrote. No judgment, no feedback, nothing. Just read it, just get it out, and then the next person reads, and then we leave the group. Like that's it. There's something. It's a strange new way of sharing work to me. I mentioned it when I went to the spring course with Natalie Goldberg, but there's something really empowering about doing that, reading that aloud, even when, there's no feedback on it, because there isn't meant to be. Like I said, this isn't a project of productivity. This is really just a free writing expression, getting used to keeping the hand moving. Really, really exciting. So that's really it. I mean, I don't think it takes much more than that to schedule and create a silent retreat for yourself, because what you need is a notebook and a pen, or in my case, 2 notebooks and 2 pens, because I finished 1 notebook and finished 1 pen this weekend. So you need some notebooks, some pens. You need a time, a space, and you need some stuff to read, whether it's revisiting some some works that have inspired you in the past, or exposing yourself to new things. I will say that probably 90% of what Natalie read to us was new to me. Definitely writers that I had heard of before, but not texts that I had read before. And that was really wonderful for me. And like I said, complementing it with my own reading of Hamlet, which I hadn't read before, was also really, really quite fun. So I hope I explained what is the vision in my mind clearly to you, but I do think this is something that is incredibly valuable. I am going to be sitting with it for a bit to see how I can bring this and when I can bring this to the Stop Writing Alone community. But I don't want, my slow motion movement in that direction to stop you from having this opportunity right now, when it is something that anyone can do for themselves and their writing buddies. I just think it was incredibly powerful. The writing that I got from it was very interesting. I haven't even reread it all yet, but I really appreciated the entire experience. And I've learned, as I yammer on here on the podcast, that I do need to give myself over to silence more frequently than I've done in the past. Note what I said at the beginning of this podcast, that even when I've done meditation for the past 12 years, that's never been silent. Never. Guided, music, mantras. So even when I was in those spaces of quote unquote quieting the mind, it was very noisy. So it's a fairly new practice to the adult me, and I think it's going to do nothing but support my creativity and growth as a writer. So I'd love to invite you to experience it yourself. With that said, I am signing up for Natalie's winter retreat, which is 5 days. So you will likely hear about this from me again then, if not before, if I've figured out a time and space and place that we can do this together. But I will put a link in the show notes for the Writing Down the Bones deck, if that's something that you are interested in getting. I used it myself this weekend. There was kind of one light homework assignment that Natalie gave us one day, and she said, tonight during your break, give 20 minutes to do a writing practice of your own, and just pick a topic and write for 20 minutes. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. It was another day that my husband took my son out. I don't remember where they went. And I said, it's quiet. I'm going to do it. I set my timer. I opened up the Writing Down the Bones deck and just picked the top card, because I had been going through the cards in order, and I could not believe, but the card that I picked said, "What is silent? Make a list. Let's push it. See if you can list at least 30 silent objects and feel each one's deep quiet." So that was my topic to write on, to make this list of 30 objects. But just as a review of what the writing practice is, you get a topic and you start writing, and you don't let your hands stop moving. So even if you find yourself swaying from the topic or breaking the rules of whatever it said, it doesn't really matter. You just keep writing for the 20 minutes. So I couldn't believe that on this day where I was really contemplating what silence meant to me, this was the topic I got. So I started writing, and I'll read it for you here. And so number 1, not me. I have been unable to keep quiet during this silent retreat, even when left alone in this house. Who the hell am I talking to all the time? Dear Nicole, shut up and write it down. Number 2, my blue blanket stretched over my bed. It's silent and wraps me in that calm as I go to sleep. Number 3, the glass of water beside me says nothing and nourishes or at least quenches my thirst with a cool, calm wave throughout my system. It doesn't need to say a thing to give me life. Number 4, I do not think the stickers on my desk are as silent as they pretend to be. While my ears hear nothing from them, the words etched upon them shout at me through my eyes. Stop writing alone. Write more books. Word nerd. Story in progress. Writer at work. And then the fortune cookie slips, also tucked in under the clear desk pad, play the same game. Every artist was at first an amateur. Don't wait for sleep to start dreaming. Self-respect is the root of discipline. Impossible is a word only to be found in the dictionary of fools. Number 5, I want to say that the wood floor beneath me is silent. But is it? Could the floor that held my father's dying form ever truly be silent, even in this room where it didn't happen, but once upon a time was my brother's room that I slept in? That night where we woke to hear all the ruckus and the confusions of a house awake beyond normal hours? Mom crying on the phone to 911, my aunt coming in after dark to aid or maybe stay with us as Mom rode along in the ambulance that was ill-equipped to help. I don't think any part of this house is ever silent. The walls carry too many memories, good and bad, and it doesn't seem to matter how much sage I burn or how loudly I clap in the corners. Dad died in the living room, Mom in the bedroom. My cousin threatened his own life in the apartment, and the rest of our full lives, full of laughs and love and joy, including my son's every moment of life, has happened here. This place has too many stories to be silent. It has a soul that sings. Number 6, the moon is silent, and I love it for that. I can step outside, look up, and find the quiet calm I am always seeking. Luminescent, faithful, and cool, no matter what time of year, I can meditate on and with the moon to find my way to a peaceful sleep, wrapped in a quiet blue blanket, in a home and a body that will never shut up. Number 7, I once stared at a leaf recently fallen out of a tree in complete fascination over its silence and brilliance. As bright yellow as a school kid's drawing of the sun, it demanded that I notice its silent descent from some unknowable branch on high. I reached into the sky, grabbing it before it could crinkle to the ground, and thought, if a leaf falls to the ground and no one is there to hear it, has it really happened? And then, what if someone is there and still no one hears it? Its silence does not erase its existence. The witness doesn't really matter. That gorgeous leaf was a part of what created the incredible golden landscape to begin with. I thanked it for its contribution to my joy. And that's what came out of 20 minutes of a reflection on silence in my writing practice. As you can hear, when you write in writing practice, you go all over the place. That was supposed to be just a list, but my hand wanted to say something about everything on the list. It was supposed to be a list of at least 30 silent objects. I got to 7, but none of that's wrong. That's how writing practice works. So I just wanted to read that to you in case you were still not clear on what that may sound like when you show up to the page, but that's the kind of thing and the kind of writing that happened in the silent retreat. Brain all over the place, but there's moments in there that are interesting descriptions or reflections or things that can come back to my works in progress, things that will sit in my brain and compost until they're ready for a story that I'm trying to tell. It's really a very interesting practice. So That's it. I want you to think about doing a silent writing retreat for yourself. When you do so, when you give yourself that day or that weekend, I want you to be real slow, just real slow. And what Natalie always says is get dumb. Get dumb. Don't try to be all, wonderful and glorious. Just unknow things, which was always a great aspiration of mine when I was a teacher. It continues to be a great aspiration as I'm a writer. When we unknow things, we get to see them with new eyes. We hear them with new ears. We experience them fresh and can observe the details that are necessary to giving the beautiful descriptions that bring our stories to life in a whole new way. Okay, I'm going to shut up because I need to learn how to get silent. But thank you for listening to every moment that I haven't been silent. And don't forget to go check out all the things going on at stopwritingalone.substack.com. I will be releasing the August calendar of events very shortly. If you are interested in being a part of the VIPs, the very invested paid subscribers, next month in Story Club, we will not be reading a master story. We will be viewing a master story. The focus of Story Club next month is Finding Nemo. It's really, really quite wonderful. If you're not familiar with Story Club, we're reading through Daniel Joshua Rubin's book, The 27 Essential Principles of Story. Every single principle is a lesson that has a master story behind it. As I mentioned, the first lesson, the master story was Hamlet. But lesson 2 is a fun watch, a rewatch for me of Finding Nemo. And we'll be doing more writing prompt parties, more write-ins, and, all different ways of gathering virtually, as well as our discussion about the story later on in the month. And every single Monday, checking in with our goals in our Goals and Accountability check-in post. So, again, you can find all the information about that over at stopwritingalone.substack.com. It's free to subscribe, but for VIP members, it is $5 a month or $50 for the entire year. And that is really it. Have a fantastic week. Happy writing. I will talk to you again next Friday. Thank you for listening.